Welcome back to today's video. In today's video, we're taking a look at a Republican trifecta for the 2024 election. And before I get into today's video, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and like the video. It's really helpful if you're able to subscribe and like the video. Let's go into today's video. Welcome back here to today's video. Now, in today's video, we're taking a look at the Republican trifecta. Now, in order for this trifecta to occur, we'd obviously have Republicans winning the House of Representatives and the Senate. Let's just go ahead here and start with the presidency, since that is what most of you are probably most interested in. We'll follow that up with the Senate, and then we'll move on to the House of Representatives. Now, I have not done a House prediction in quite some time, and I have not done a Senate prediction in quite some time, so I'm going to be doing my Senate prediction and my House prediction if Republicans win in today's video. So, filling out some of these key states for the Republicans and Democrats respectively here in the East and Western Coast. Obviously, Republicans and Democrats will win. We will give Iowa and Ohio. Ohio will be likely for Donald Trump. Likely will be Florida and Texas. And in the state of Illinois, Joe Biden will obviously end up winning. And the state of Hawaii, Joe Biden will end up winning. In the state of Nebraska, Donald Trump will end up winning several of the congressional districts. In the state of Maine, we will see that Joe Biden will win several of the congressional districts, although Donald Trump will win one of the congressional districts by a lean margin. And we will also go ahead and give Joe Biden the state of Colorado and the state of New Mexico by likely margins, respectively there. All right, so now let's go ahead and fill in several of these swing states. For the state of Minnesota, Joe Biden's only ahead by around, I believe, 3 to 4 points there in this particular state. Around some polls, he's ahead by 4 points. So we will go ahead and give this state to him as being lean there. And also for the state of Virginia, it will also go as being lean. The state of Minnesota will be tilt. All right, so moving on here to our next state. Let's go ahead and start here with the state of Georgia. In the state of Georgia, in the state of Georgia, let me go ahead and look at the state of Georgia. Georgia, Trump is leading currently by 3.8%. I don't believe the polls have changed much since the last video that we made for a Trump and Biden rematch. Trump is currently dwindling in the polls. More recently, we do see that Donald Trump is dwindling in the polls compared to before. He was leading Joe Biden by around 5 points in Georgia, although now that margin has decreased. So we will go ahead and give it, though, to the former president due to the fact that he's still leading in the polls. And we will go and give it by a tilt margin. Moving on to the state of Arizona, Donald Trump is leading by 4.5%. He was actually leading for quite some time by around 5%. It went down. It was staying around 5%. Now it's at around 4.5%. Donald Trump increased in terms of the amount of support he was getting, although at the same time Joe Biden increased by a larger margin, leading to the fact that both of them are being separated by 4.5%. So you will go ahead and give it to Donald Trump. Moving on here, the state of Nevada. The state of Nevada, Trump's currently leading by 3.2%. In the majority of these polls, Trump is in the lead, so we will go ahead and give it to the former president here, the state of Nevada, there by a tilt margin, and that puts Donald Trump at 252 electoral votes. Now, the state of North Carolina, if you look at the polls here from the state of North Carolina, Trump's leading by 4%, and in the majority of the polls, he is leading as well. So we will go ahead and give it to the former president of the state of North Carolina by a tilt margin. Moving on to the state of Wisconsin. The state of Wisconsin, taking a look at some polling data, Donald Trump is ahead by 0.6% in the critical swing state of Wisconsin here. Now, if you go back a while ago, actually, just taking a look here a little while ago, to the 2020 polling. When you look at the 2020 polling, we see that Joe Biden was ahead in the polling by 6.7% by around election day. Okay, the average at around that time was that Joe Biden was ahead by 6.7%. Although in the actual election, Joe Biden ended up winning by only 0.7% if you round to the nearest tenth of a percent. So what we saw there was that the polls overestimated Biden by approximately 6%. Now, if you go back to 2020, you see Trump's leading by 6%. Well, if you apply that same polling error that you had in 2020 to 2024, you see that Trump is leading by a relatively big margin. That's around more than 6%. So it's up for you to decide whether or not the polling is still wrong in the state of Wisconsin, obviously. I do believe that the polls in Wisconsin are underestimating the former president, and I do believe that he will win in the state of Wisconsin by a larger margin than being projected. Nevertheless, I will give it to him. He is still leading in this particular state. And I do believe that he will win by a larger margin than what the polls are saying. in the state of Wisconsin. In the state of Michigan, Trump is currently ahead by 2.8%. Now, at a certain point, Trump was ahead by around 5% in the swing state of Michigan, although now it's only at 2.8%. But nevertheless, he is still in the lead, so we will go ahead and give it to Donald Trump. Moving on to the state of Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania is obviously an interesting state. Joe Biden is currently leading by 0.1%. It has been shifting back and forth to either candidate over time. I do believe that at the end, I do believe that if Donald Trump does win, I do believe that he will end up winning the state of Pennsylvania. Could see Joe Biden potentially winning in that particular state, although I do see Donald Trump winning in this particular state. I don't think 0.1% is enough. It has been going back and forth. And on average, polls do tend to overestimate the former president in a majority of the polls. I will go and give it to the former president in terms of that. But if you wanted to base it off of polling data, which is what I'm going to do right now, if you want to base it off of polling data, I will go ahead and give it to Joe Biden, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to base it off of polling data. For any people who have concerns over that, I'm going to base the general election off of polling data in terms of the state of Pennsylvania. All right. So for the Nevada and Maine, I'm going to go ahead and give Nebraska's second congressional district there, the second congressional district worth one electoral vote to Joe Biden. So that puts Joe Biden at 245 and Donald Trump at 293. Now, I do believe that Donald Trump will win in the state of Pennsylvania. I don't believe that 0.1% is enough for Joe Biden to take a victory in that particular state. And I do believe that Donald Trump will win in that particular state, but I will base the state of Pennsylvania off of polling data. Now, I'm not too sure about Nebraska's second congressional district. I haven't seen much polling in that certain congressional district, although Republicans are doing relatively good in terms of Congress, in terms of the congressional district there. Republicans are in control there of that certain congressional district. And also Joe Biden won, but on the other hand, Joe Biden won in this particular district by around 6 points in the 2020 election. So 6 points is a relatively large margin, so I will go ahead and give it to Joe Biden. But Pennsylvania, I based it off of polling data. Joe Biden's ahead by 0.1%. I don't believe that he's going to win, but he's ahead by 0.1%. Moving on here to the state, to the Senate. All right, to the Senate. Let's go ahead and take a look at the particular states here for regards to the Senate. And let's go ahead and give Democrats several states here: Washington, California. Obviously, Democrats are at 28 seats and Republicans are at 38 seats. All right. So Democrats are at 28 and Republicans are at 38. But then we have the 1/3 left to go. All right, so the state of Washington, California, we'll also give the Republicans here the state of Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, Nebraska. We'll also go ahead and give them the state of Missouri, Tennessee, Missouri, Florida, West Virginia, and Ohio. Sorry, not Ohio. But we'll go ahead and give them the state of Indiana, and we'll go ahead and give Democrats the state of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Florida. We'll go ahead and give Republicans the state of Texas and Democrats the state of Hawaii. They're going to leap back here just in a few seconds. Utah, Arizona, Nevada, and we'll go ahead and give them Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland, also the state of New York, and that puts them at 248 seats. And let's go ahead and take off the state of Montana. Sorry about accidentally put that particular state as I was moving across. But now we have them at 48 seats, 48 seats. Now let's go ahead and give Republicans the state of Montana. I wanted to talk about the state of Montana. And let's also go ahead and give Democrats one of these congressional districts right over here. Sorry, we'll go ahead and give Republicans that certain congressional district. And we'll go ahead, that puts Republicans at 50 seats. And we'll go ahead and give them the state of Ohio. So not the state of Ohio. Ohio will go to the Democrats, and the Republicans will win in Maine. All right. So that's what's Republicans at 51 seats, Democrats at 49 seats. So Republicans at 51 seats, Democrats at 49 seats for the Senate. Now, that will put them in the victory regardless of whether Donald Trump wins the presidency or not. If they were to lose Montana, for example, that could be obviously detrimental towards retaining control of the presidency if Joe Biden wins, and obviously would be very hard to get legislation passed through. Although 51 seats is more than enough in terms of what they need for a minimum. That being said, it wouldn't be enough in terms of, filtering out everything, especially when you have some more liberal Republicans, such as Susan Collins on the Senate. It could shift certain bills over to the Democrats. So that is for your Senate. And now let's move on to the House of Representatives. Now, the House of Representatives, I already filled it out. Republicans are at 223 seats, and Democrats are at 212 seats. So I have filled these certain congressional districts out. I have used 270 to win in order to fill out these certain congressional districts. And as you can see, I have filled out some obviously important ones, particularly when you go to Pennsylvania, 7th and 8th congressional district are extremely important. If you look at, I believe, uh, one of the third congressional district in the state of Washington is important. You have several other congressional districts which I could go into in depth, although I'm not going to go too in depth for the purpose of today's video due to the fact that this video I do not want to extend it to be extremely long. We are going through all three branches, all three sectors that in terms of like getting legislation passed. So I did want to go through this relatively quickly, but I did go over, a lot of a factor into this, and I did go over this ahead of time. That puts Republicans at 223, Democrats at 212. This is a Republican trifecta for the 2024 election, guys. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe button down below and like the video. This puts obviously Trump, just to recap here for all those of you who are forwarding to the end of the video. Donald Trump at 293, Joe Biden at 245. I am giving Pennsylvania to Joe Biden. I think Donald Trump could win in that state. I think that he will win in that state, but we will go ahead and give it to Joe Biden. The Senate, Republicans will end up winning 51 seats. I think Ohio will go to the Democrats. And also in terms of the House of Representatives, Republicans will end up winning 223 seats. Democrats will win 212 seats in the House of Representatives. This is my prediction here for a Republican trifecta. Obviously, this could change as more polls come in. Now, I would like to say that Joe Biden, in terms of what most people are thinking about, and most people are thinking about the presidential race. So let me just talk a little bit about that. We are, I believe, about 12 minutes in today's video, so we have about a couple minutes left to cover this. But when it comes to Joe Biden here, Joe Biden has been gaining in the polls more recently. He has been gaining in the polls, although he still is behind Trump, I will say that. But he has been gaining in the polls. If this trend continues at the proportional rate that it is continuing at, you could see potentially that Joe Biden is actually leading in the polls by the 2024 election in November. So you could see that possibility that Joe Biden is ahead in the polls by November if it continues. That being said, the accuracy of the polls is disputed. Naturally speaking, you would think the polls are overestimating Joe Biden, and I do believe to a certain extent they are. Now, when you look at majority of the polls that I pulled up, most of these are just two-way races between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Most of these are just head-to-head races. When you factor in Kennedy and Jill Stein and Cornel West, you do see that it does help Trump. And I've seen several polls when you take in all 3 or 4 or 5 candidates. It does seem to help Trump. Now, RFK, it is very tricky when it comes to RFK. RFK has been very appealing to several conservatives, particularly on the COVID-19 vaccine and other issues related to that, and free speech issues and things like that. He has been appealing to conservatives. At the same time, some individuals say that he's going to appeal to Democrats due to the fact that his last name is Kennedy. I do think that there's more than that. I think that Kennedy, generally speaking, RFK Kennedy, obviously, he is liberal when it comes to issues such as environmental policy and other policies such as that. Although when it comes to free speech and stuff like that, he does lean towards the more conservative aisle. So that's when it comes to RFK. So you could really take it either way when it comes to RFK, whether he's going to pull more votes from Trump or Biden. But then it comes to the issue, another issue which a lot of people are talking about, and that's the issue of Jill Stein. Nobody's really talking about this, but they should be talking about this. Jill Stein and Cornel West. The problem is for Joe Biden is that even in some polls where you may see that RFK is taking more votes from Donald Trump, what I believe is happening is when you take in all 5 candidates, Jill Stein and Cornel West, what that ends up happening is that takes more votes away from Biden. Because no Trump supporter or person who is likely to support Donald Trump is going to end up voting for Cornel West or Jill Stein. So that 1 or 2% of the vote is a big deal. 1 or 2% of the vote is a big deal. And that's definitely fracturing Joe Biden's coalition. And that 1 to 2% could end up favoring Donald Trump, because I don't think people are talking about Jill Stein and Cornel West as much as they should be. They're not talking about them whatsoever. They're really talking about RFK a lot, but they're not talking about Jill Stein and the other candidates. So I do think that they need to be talking about Jill Stein and Cornel West. I do think that even though they're only going to take 1 to 2%, they could be a Ralph Nader. You never know. So that is with regards to those two candidates. Now, with regards to the Senate here, the Senate, a lot of people are disputing whether or not Ohio will go towards the Democrats, obviously. Shannon Brown is obviously an incumbent Democrat who's running for re-election, and he is ahead in most of the polls by 538. He was ahead. I haven't checked the polls more recently, but last time I checked, he was ahead in the majority of the polls. Ohio is a very interesting state. Votes, generally speaking, Republican in terms of the general election, the last two elections. Although it is extremely Democrat in terms of the Senate, he obviously is like an incumbent Democrat, and he's doing well against his opponents, specifically his opponents that he's running against. Now, when it comes to West Virginia, obviously Joe Manchin is retiring, and he's not doing good in the polls. Jim Justice is extremely popular, and he will end up winning. Montana, I do believe the Republicans are going to take over. I doubt that the Democrats are going to keep the seat whatsoever. I don't think that they're going to keep it. It's just too conservative in order for them to keep it. Nevada, I don't think the Republicans are going to do good. Arizona, Carrie Lake, I mean, she's just frankly she needs to leave the Republican Party in order for the Republican Party to actually advance. Like, she needs to go to whatever she was doing before. Like, I believe she was a news anchor or something. But she's really costing the Republican Party a lot of votes. She's going to cost the Republican Party a lot of votes. She's going to lose badly in the Senate, and she's not going to win whatsoever. Texas, Ted Cruz, I mean, he didn't do so good in 2018. He won by around 3 points. I think this state has shifted more conservative since 2018. So there you go for that. So those are some of the ones that people are talking about. Now let's talk a little bit about the House of Representatives. Obviously, House of Representatives is extremely crucial in terms of who's going to end up winning because of the fact that it's so close right now. I do think the Republicans are going to end up overperforming than what most people are saying. Most expectations are, at least, due to the fact that Donald Trump is actually running on the ballot. Due to the fact that Donald Trump is on the ballot, I do think that's going to bring more Republicans into voting, right? I do believe that it's going to make more Republicans end up voting because when you go back to the 2020 election, you did see that although many people predicted that it would be pretty solid for the Democrats in terms of the Democrats keeping the Senate, keeping the House of Representatives, it did get extremely close, and Democrats only ended up leading by around 10 seats, I believe, around that margin, 10 to 15 seats. So I do believe that the reason why that was is because of the fact that Donald Trump was on the ballot and more Republicans turned out and there was more energy. You have to recognize one thing. One thing that you need to recognize is energy. There's a lot more energy into the 2024 election compared to the 2022 midterms election, right? So I do believe the Republicans are going to end up turning out at larger margins. Another issue is Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade, if you remember, Roe v. Wade was overturned, I believe, in June or July of 2022. And then in November of 2022, we had the election, correct? So it came right off of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. On the other hand, right now, Roe v. Wade has been overturned, I believe, about almost. It's going to hit about 2 years. It's going to be about 2 years since Roe v. Wade was overturned, and by the 2024 election, it's going to be 2 years and about 4 months, right? So that is going to be quite some time, and I do believe that issue for Democrats is going to die down a little bit. I do believe that that's going to die down a little bit for Democrats, and I don't believe that it's going to be as big of an issue as it was in the 2022 midterms. Also, Donald Trump has been taking more moderate positions in terms of the Republican Party. He has been taking more moderate positions on abortion. And when we look at most of the polling data, Donald Trump is, relatively not that behind of Joe Biden in terms of abortion. He's only, I believe, within around 10 points of Joe Biden in terms of the issue of abortion. Compare that to other Republicans like Ron DeSantis. I guarantee you that Ron DeSantis would be polling much farther away from Joe Biden compared to a Donald Trump, right? So I do believe that issue may encourage Republicans to go out and vote for the former president and vote for their House representative. So I do believe that will narrow up the House of Representatives. But that is my prediction here right now for a Republican trifecta. Donald Trump 293, Joe Biden 245, and with regards to the Senate, Democrats at 49 seats, Republicans at 51 seats, And for the House of Representatives, Republicans at 223, Democrats at 212. Guys, if you like this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below and like the video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.